Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John's report is for the 17th of August, and well, nice pushback right off that ABM, straight back to the ABM Gold again, slightly above it, but as soon as it gets slightly outside of that range, it gets pulled back right to it, and we're just literally hovering on it right there. And so these ranges that we've described fitting beautifully. I mean, that is a pretty tight pack within there, but for these little tails, both times happening just to try and clear out stops. Overall, we've not seen anything, well, at least economically or whatever, that would justify broader decline. I know there's still a lot of concern about trade war issues and that, but at the end of the day, as you can see, all these other countries are coming back and saying we want to make a deal because they don't have really much choice. And it's always been surprising to hear the pundits think otherwise, but at the end of the day, well, the United States is the biggest trading partner there is, and to block yourself from that market and or have barriers, it's going to make you think twice. From a reading standpoint, you can see, though, that we're still working on achieving some of the crossovers from at least a new buy. So we're still within a weakness category, but within that, you can see there are plenty of times that you can go weeks of this consolidation into a peak point before a breakdown fully takes hold. So until we get a orange reset, this has all been short-term buyers lifting this. Now you might get a crossover coming up here at some point, but don't be afraid to go to the short side when the conditions meet itself, particularly rejections of the ABM yellow. To me, are poignant. I start to take profits when I get below Keith Fibonacci levels. In this particular case, we get the 76%, but we also have our ABM green, and that particularly when you're looking at the NASDAQ here. And you can see, if I go back to the ES, you can see the divergence between the two. Whereas the NASDAQ for so long was much stronger, now we have the ES that's outperforming. You can see the turnaround here, attempting to get that orange reset, and you're not even seeing anything close to that on the NASDAQ yet. Now that can change very quickly, but it's just important to note. Also, some of this recovery, you can see from a strong euro rebound, still below the lower band, well, the upper band of the range that I had, but just below it on its way back up to it. Putting in its best configuration from a buy setup, however, with the plus 13.5, you're going to need to see that steel reset in order to get anything of significant momentum, not to mention you're still below the negative 13.5. So any pop here is likely to still be revisited lower because you get the dip below the red line. Doesn't mean it can't rally all the way to the 100% before it does that, but poignantly watching that 23%, I'm going to get the value there, 14306. So that pretty much is a easy way to see what the benchmark is. Every time it's gotten close to the 23%, even on this decline, it's rejected from it. So that still will be a significant hurdle. And again, plenty of flight to quality, still maintaining in the treasury. And again, this is where I talk about that gold trade is really in oil, meaning the inflation trade has been put into the oil because of its liquidity, and there's no concern about manipulation as much because it's just too big a market to overwhelm, and it's a commodity that's needed. When we do flip to gold, you can see yes, there's some demand for physical gold, but at the end of the day, it's usually something that governments acquire as a safeguard or store of value, so to speak. But if we look at our 5K chart, going back from the end of the previous day, we had a couple of positive extremes. They filled back in pretty quickly. We started at that pre-market with some positive extremes, particularly going back to this bar. Those filled pretty softly too as we came down to the long algo, popped right off of them, filled those. And then we made this next set. This one partially filled, came down to right about 3/4 of the way into it. I wouldn't call it a full fill by any stretch of the imagination, but it really wasn't all that weak. Couldn't quite get a 13.5 move. The orange there was pretty soft on the algos and the dip, and then that just produced another wave back up from the ABM yellow. And it pretty much followed the ABM yellow until we got gold, which meant obviously we're going back up to a high there. And proceeded up. Then we started making more positive extremes. The first being with right about here, which, yes, it's not hard to see if you correlate going across. That's exactly where the retrace went to, turning back. Then we got to the peak, and it was interesting because here's what I look for. You know, we talk about this opening of the snake, and some people get confused. It's like, okay, orange is popping up, steel's popping down, there's the mouth. Okay, I should short that. Well, no, you needed to have your green move below red in order to do that. That doesn't happen until, well, in this particular case, almost a full DOC spread right here takes place right at the peak. That's at the 28.50.50, which is not bad from a short standpoint. And that retrace, this positive extreme, worked out beautifully right there. Took you all the way down to 28.39.50. So mile stretch. I like to do it like this. I just mark my endpoint to endpoint. It tells you how many points you would have got, even if you took somewhere in between there. Still would have been fine. An excellent play off that from a short standpoint, and not hard to have followed the long to the upside, so that was easy enough as well. A little more complicated into this area because, well, you got the reset. Expectation-wise, you're still looking at a dip below the red line here, and the likelihood of having to come back and retouch the zone. So it becomes a little bit more interesting when we get right here. We're starting to develop a gold candle right now. Is it going to be above or below the 50%? And in that particular case, is that going to be, you know, in a delicate spot? We're seeing cyan dip below red at this particular point. So that points to potentially us moving right back up to the highs. But it hasn't formed enough yet to know for sure where that's at. Getting close to the end of the bar though, so we'll see pretty shortly. Right now it's below the 50% line as we speak, and we keep flashing from 0 to flat. All in all, good stuff. I think it's going to make for another interesting Friday. Again, these ranges are beautiful. 32s from a range standpoint, even more as we were going up over here. If I pull those down, you can see 34 was that range. I got to take the snap mode off when I move those, otherwise they go haywire to the close. And I was just down here to see it. So, pretty decent range. All in all, exactly what we were hoping for from an increased volatility based on what we were seeing from algo activity setting up into this August period, and has not let us down at all. I will continue to put up anything that's unique on the Skype chat, but as always, trade well. We'll talk to you later.